Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Job Picks, the other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC 308. We got 13 fights to break down for you tonight. Got a great main event. Ilia Topuria taking on Max Holloway. Co-main event. Hamza Chimaev, Robert Whittaker, 5-round co-main event. And a bunch of other great fights on the card. Going to be a lot of testosterone in the building because there's no women's MMA. We had 3 women's MMA fights last week
that were just
absolutely brutal to break down. 45 minutes of women's MMA in a row. We don't have to deal with that this week. How are we doing tonight? We missed last week. I apologize for that, but I had a little personal thing to deal with. Brought another person into the world, a family member. Baby girl was born, so I was at the hospital Monday night. Couldn't record for you, but we're back. We got a big pay-per-view going on. How are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. I'm so pumped for this card. This is a main event that makes me nervous for both guys. I love both guys. Max Holloway fan for a long time. Ilya, super fun to watch. Just makes me, I don't know, man. I got anxiety about this one. And of course, Hamzat is fighting. If he doesn't get sick this week, against Whittaker, that's a phenomenal matchup too. And like you said, there's a ton of other sneaky good fights on this card. Every fight is going to produce something that has my interest. So I'm pumped for it.
I think it's the highest level matchup of the year, Topuria and Holloway. I think both guys are amazing. It's my favorite fight of the year. Should be really fun. We'll break that down towards the end of the show. But let's recap last week. How'd the bets go for you? I know they went well. They went well for me too. We had PFL as well. I think on the night we were positive over 16 units as a combined total. Had a great week. Let's try to keep it going. What were your big cashes?
Yeah, dude. So it was a terrible week to find like straight bets on the money line, totals, all that stuff. I think I played Daniel Pineda, just fading the public, like with Elkins being a public dog. Other than that, I had a few over-unders, but I hit Jocelyn Edwards' submission plus 1,100 to put me up over 3 units right off the beginning of the card. And she hit that in the last minute. Super sketchy. Brad Katona plus 3.5 spread was my biggest play of the night. I hit Asu Almabayev by decision. I hit a 2-leg parlay with Jocelyn Edwards and then Alice Ardeline fight to go over 2.5. Hit the over 2.5 in the Fluffy Ferreira fight, which was a sweat. I didn't expect that to be a sweat on the Hernandez side. I thought if somebody was getting put out in the first 2 rounds, it was going to be Pereira getting his hand raised. But what a dominant performance, man. So, yeah, on the night went up 4.95 units. I'll take that every single week. Up just around 8 units in the last 2 UFC cards. I know you're up a load. I think we're close to 30 units in the last 2 weeks for UFC and PFL.
Yeah, on the year, we're cracking on the door of 100 units for my bets, at least, because I think we're at over 50 units on DFS and we're up over 40 units on the sports book plays. I call them, because DFS I keep as a separate tally because not everybody can use the DFS, but DFS was cracking last weekend. We hit the 20x payout. They all doubted, but the people got to understand it's a 20x payout. You only got to hit 3 a year to be profitable. We've already hit 4, so we're on track to possibly hit 5, be up 100x. Not 100x exactly, because we do lose a good amount of them, but to hit 5 would be awesome. Maybe we could hit 6, maybe 7. We got enough cards to go through, but great week for me. Up over 11 units between PFL and UFC, and consistent profit across the board. So we like that. Hopefully we continue with that. If you want all of our bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks premium membership. Links down in the description below to join. We'll probably have a promo code going on this weekend. So stay tuned for that, and you can get in for a 5-day free trial. But you'll definitely want the bets for this card because it's a big card. A lot of fights going on. Probably have a lot of bets. But let's get into it with the breakdown. We'll start it off with the first fight of the night. Bruno Silva taking on Ismail Naurdiev. Naurdiev coming back to the UFC after getting cut. He went 2-2. Then he goes off to the regional promotions. And it's a shaky ride. I don't know why they're bringing him back. I think he's 1-2 in his last 3 fights. This makes absolutely no sense. But he is still 28 years old. He has been in the UFC, so he has UFC experience. He has a last name that ends in V. We are in Abu Dhabi, so I guess that's why he's coming back. He's taking on Bruno Silva, who sits as a -102 underdog. Bruno, not on the best stretch. He's 35. Just lost to a 50-year-old Chris Weidman with one leg. So he's on a downward trajectory. But this is a matchup that I think he could win. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he could win it too. Like, Naurdiev has never really impressed me too much. And, a guy that's going to go out there and beat Bruno Silva is a guy who's going to pressure you, get in your face, land the big shots, and can mix in the wrestling as well, just to kind of tire out Bruno Silva. But a lot of what I see from Naurdiev is he's kind of patient on the feet. He'll throw in leg kicks. Just doesn't really, I don't know, man. He just doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to go out there looking for the finish right away or do anything that's really going to phase Bruno Silva. And Bruno Silva, to me, is such a veteran. He's been in there with the best fighters in the world, to where if he can kind of keep this fight on the feet for an extended period of time without taking big damage, he's going to land his own shots here. And I don't really have a bunch of confidence that Ismail Naurdiev is a guy who can, in his first fight back in the UFC, that's going to handle that very well. I know he's fighting more, in his home area, home part of the world, kind of a home field advantage for him. But Bruno's kind of slick with the striking, but not only striking. Like, we saw him mix in timely takedowns when he needed to against a guy like Sharaput and Magomedov. Shown that when he has to, he's not a bad, well-rounded mixed martial artist. I just like the veteran experience for getting even money fight here. I think Ismail Naurdiev would have to slip the plus money for me to really take a look at him, but yeah, I'm kind of with you, man. I think Silva can win this fight. Avoid the big shots. Don't get your leg chewed up with the leg kicks. Keep this fight at range and, get a little feel out going early, and I think he could have success as it goes on. So I'm going to take Bruno Silva for the pick. I like the veteran experience.
Yeah, I just don't think Naurdiev is UFC level, honestly. I don't know. The only reason I could see them bringing him back is because he's ranked the #1 middleweight in the Middle East. Obviously, this card is in the Middle East, so I guess maybe they want to bring him there just because. But the dude's 4-3 on the regional scene, and I know a couple of these names that he's lost to. Jarrah Hussein Al-Silawai. I know him because he was in the PFL and he got knocked out 3 times in a row. He's been knocked out 5 times in his career. He lost to Vadim. He lost to that guy. He lost to Vadim Kutsi, who we saw in the Contender Series. Wasn't very good. And he was an absolute gas bag. So I just don't see how, if he's losing to these guys who are definitely not UFC level, how's he going to beat Bruno Silva? Because even though Bruno Silva is not on like a good stretch, he's still losing to guys that are pretty solid. Losing to Shah Magomedov, who's on the main card of this fight card. He's losing to Chris Weidman, ex-champ. He's losing to Brendan Allen. He's losing to GM3. GM3 is a solid opponent. He's losing to Alex Pereira. Like, I just think there's levels to this. I think Bruno Silva gets this one done. And I'm with you. I got to side with the veteran in the UFC here in Bruno Silva. Even though he's on the streak, I think he's the right side.
Bruno cracks too, man.
Moving on, we got Ibo Aslan. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying Bruno cracks. I mean, we've seen him do some damage on guys and land the big shot. And I mean, it wouldn't put it past him to find something here either.
No, not at all. Ibo Aslan taking on Rafael Cerqueira. Cerqueira making his UFC debut, 11-0, undefeated. Taking on Aslan, who's 1-0 in the UFC, beat Anton Turkalj in his debut. Round 3 knockout. Got a little revenge there on Turkalj, who was his only professional loss. Cerqueira, a guy who I believe trains with Jailton Almeida based on his Instagram story, or at least knows Jailton Almeida, so he's got a little bit of a UFC connection. He's in the Hall of Fame for Demo Fight. That's the promotion that he's been fighting in the most. I tried to find most of his tape. I couldn't really find a lot of it, to be honest. His fights are pretty hard to find. But from what I did see, pretty solid striker. Kind of more patient, more calculated, but flows pretty well. And he's taking on another kickboxer here in Ibo Aslan, who we know has big power and tries to get you out of there early. So it should be a striker's delight. Who do you got?
Yeah, I was telling you before this, I'm not a big Ibo Aslan guy. In his fight against Turkalj, there was moments Turkalj was kind of piecing him up on the feet, landing big shots. And for Ibo Aslan, he just doesn't move his head. He kind of blocks punches with his face. He's not real fast with his movements or anything. Like, yes, the obvious thing with him is his power, and he does have a lot of it. But a lot of his shots, he's just kind of winging these bombs. Not a lot of technical, capabilities behind his striking whatsoever. And a guy like Rafael Cerqueira, who is technical, at least what you can see on the regional scene, he throws a really good body kick that I think could slow down Ibo Aslan in this spot. And he's a super big guy for the division. I mean, he's listed as a heavyweight when you go on Tapology. I know he's fought in guys in that weight class before. This is at 205. It's just, I don't know, man. If Ibo can't land a big knockout shot early, I think I'm going to trust that Rafael Cerqueira has the better gas tank. He's definitely more athletic looking. I mean, Ibo's kind of a stockier, real thick guy. This guy's tall. He's got a lot of muscle mass and hits really hard too. If you look at his highlight tape, he stops a lot of people with the body kick. He's landed, spinning to the body. He'll land, just the regular kick, and guys seem to crumble from it. I'm not saying Ibo's going to crumble or get finished by it, but I do think, from what I saw against Turkali, Ibo was slowing down. He was pretty tired. Turkali wasn't hitting anything to the body. He wasn't doing any kind of damage to the legs like that. And I think Rafael Cerqueira is going to have a chance to really, really dig in and do some work early that's going to pay dividends towards the end of the fight. So I'm going to take him for the pick. I think if you take Ibo, I think you take him by KO. Like, I don't think he's winning a decision here against a better, more technical striker.
Yeah, I'm not too high on Ibo Aslan. I think his kickboxing is decent, but it's a little bit stiff. He hits hard, but there's not like a ton of wrinkles to his game. He's going to stand in front of you. He's going to do the normal kickboxing thing. I think Cerqueira is a little bit more dynamic, moves a little bit better, mixes his weapons a little bit more, looks for openings a little bit more. We'll see how he does at this level, but he is still undefeated. He's looked pretty good. He's 34, making his debut, so he doesn't got time to waste. He's got to come in here and get a win. So I'm going to side with Cerqueira, but this isn't a confident pick whatsoever. We could maybe see him have the better gas tank. We don't really know because Cerqueira is usually knocking dudes out in the first round or the second round. And Aslan, I guess he got the round 3 KOs last time out, but both guys were pretty gassed at that point. So we'll see. But Cerqueira is my pick, not a confident one. Moving on, we got Fakhretdinov taking on Carlos Leal. Leal coming in here, making his UFC debut on short notice. Fakhretdinov was supposed to fight Nursultan Ruziboyev. I have no idea why they made that fight. It makes no sense to me because we just saw Ruziboyev get wrestled up by Buckley, and then they're going to give him Renat Fakhretdinov. Like, made no sense. But either way, we don't have an OV versus an OV. And I don't really understand this matchup either because I guess it's just a way to get Renat Fakhretdinov a fight. But Fakhretdinov has looked good in the UFC. He's looked pretty dominant in some points. He's coming off that split to Nicholas Dalby, where he got Dalby down. His gas tank looked better than the Zaleski fight, where he kind of gassed out and got pieced up, but went to a draw. I think this is probably a winnable fight for him. I know Carlos Leal from the PFL. He's a striker at his base, but he's been beat by other better strikers in the past. And I'm not saying Fakhretdinov is a better striker by any means, but we know his takedown game is pretty solid. And I think he could probably ride out a decision victory by just getting takedowns. So I'm going to lean with Fakhretdinov, but I'm not really sure what to think with Leal in this position. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Fakhretdinov sitting at minus 192 on DraftKings right now. And, I think a lot of that line, him being under minus 200, where he's not normally that small of a favorite. I think a lot of it's recency bias. We've seen him in close fights, against Dalby. What's his name? Zaleski, almost had him finished. I don't really think Carlos Leal is going to be able to keep it on the feet enough to where he's going to really get his striking flowing and fighting downhill. I think he might have his moments on the feet, but right when he connects or lands a big shot, I think Fakhretdinov is going to be in on the hips, push him against the cage, and it's just a matter of time till he gets taken down from there. And I haven't really seen anything from Carlos Leal that makes me think he's going to be able to keep up with the cardio and have enough energy to get back to his feet over and over and still be dangerous in the striking. If you look at his record, 4 of his 5 losses, I believe. Yeah, 4 of his 5 losses come by decision. Fakhretdinov takes guys to decision, and even when they're close, the judges seem to favor him. So that makes me more confident to where if Hanat went to a decision here, he's going to win it. And I think, he could do some good damage on the ground too if he gets in dominant position. Look for submissions. Leal's been submitted before. I just think this is going to be another Hanat Fakhretdinov wrestling clinic against the guy making his UFC debut. If it stays on the feet, yeah, Carlos has a chance, but I just don't think it's not really in Hanat to keep fights on the feet long.
Yeah, we were talking about on before the show. If anyone in the comments that Leal beat Ray Cooper and Ray Cooper is like some really good fighter, Ray Cooper had just won $1 million before that fight. The year before, Ray Cooper, after he won that $1 million, he didn't care about fighting anymore until he lost all that money, or at least ran out of money, and now he cares about fighting again. But yeah, I think this is Fakhretdinov wrestling clinic again. I'll take him. Moving on, we got Farid Basharat taking on Victor Hugo. Farid, I believe, is the bigger or the better brother of the Basharat bros. We just saw Javid pick up his first loss to Ayman Zahabi as a big favorite, just like this earlier in the year. He's taking on Victor Hugo, who I actually forgot about his debut fight. I was like, I remember him from the Contender Series when he got that knee bar, and then I just kind of forgot about his UFC debut. I had to go back and rewatch it, and I like what I saw. I know he was taking on a guy kind of short notice there in Falcao. I think it was short notice, might not have been, but he looked pretty solid. I mean, he showed pretty solid takedown defense. His striking looked pretty solid. He's on a 14-fight win streak, and he's a big underdog here taking on Basharat, who is still undefeated and has made it look pretty easy going up against his opponents in the UFC so far. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, the line's super wide, in my opinion, first of all. Farid, he's had a ton of success because of how well-rounded he is. Like, the guy can strike with you on the feet. He's very, very technical. He's not going to be a guy who goes out there and gets a ton of knockouts. I think he's got, 1 and 12 wins. But his striking is good. He uses his kicks to the body good, kick to the legs, can set up his wrestling with the striking. And I like that a lot. His wrestling is very technical. He has a really good process, I think. If he doesn't get it right away, he's going to switch to a single leg, find a way to get you down to the ground. And he's really the most dangerous, obviously, when he can get you to the ground and look for submissions. He's, got some long limbs. He's slick with it. We saw against Clydeson Rodriguez, the submission in the first round was very, very fast. And I think that fight to end inside the distance was like, I want to say it was like plus 175 to plus 200. And he finished it really fast. The fight with Taylor Lapilus was interesting to me because it was competitive for the most part. Lapilus is a guy, not another great finisher, but a guy who's well-rounded. I kind of put Victor Hugo into that well-rounded category. I mean, you look at the way he finishes fights, half are by knockout, half are by submission. We've seen him with big power on the feet. We've seen him pull off some nasty submissions, like on the Contender Series with the knee bar. I just think, through the first 2 rounds, I think he's going to have enough to be competitive wherever this fight goes. And even when it's standing, I think it's going to be him landing the bigger shots, him probably landing more damage in this fight. It's when it gets to the wrestling. If Hugo can use his good jiu-jitsu and his strength to either work back to his feet, reverse position, or even look for some kind of submission, I just think he makes this a way more competitive fight than being a plus 430 dog. So I think Farid might be just a little slicker everywhere to where he will win a decision. But plus 430, man, it's super interesting to me and can't really fault anybody if they're going to take the shot on that.
Yeah, if you're betting Farid Basharat at minus 670, you're not going to make it in this game. I'll just tell you that you're not, because there's no reason that he should be minus 670. The guy he's good, but his game doesn't really allow him to be a minus 670 against like anybody, really. I just don't really understand how. I mean, we just saw Javid Basharat lose as a minus 700, minus 800 favorite.
Yep.
And they're pretty similar fighters. I know Farid, I think, is the better fighter, but they're very similar. The way that they approach it, they're very twitchy on the feet, a lot of feints, very calculated. They'll mix in takedowns, and they'll look to get into top position. And, if you get a lower level guy like Clayton Rodriguez, I guess maybe you could find a submission. I think he's good, but he's not minus 670 good. And I think Victor Hugo is actually good himself. I mean, he's on a 14-fight win streak. I think he's dangerous on the ground. I think he's very active off his back. If Basharat gets him down to the ground, I think he's going to be not in trouble, but I think he'll be put in positions where he has to defend. And I kind of think back to the Basharat and Blackshear fight, where Blackshear was pretty active off his back, or at least looking for sweeps. And he gave him a run for his money. I think Victor Hugo could give him some problems in that realm on the feet. I think he's going to hit a lot harder. I think his timing is pretty solid. So there's no way I'm playing Basharat, and I'm not even going to take him for a pick. I'm going to take Victor Hugo for a pick. I'm not saying he's a lock by any means. I think he's the rightful underdog, but I think it's just crazy. I think maybe you could price this as like Basharat minus 200, and I'd be like, okay, but minus 670 is just unbelievably bad. Like it's ridiculous. The bad part is we're in Abu Dhabi, and if it goes to the scorecards, you probably know who's going to get the nod. So,
yeah. I mean, the thing that's interesting to me is, Farid's 12-0. Victor Hugo isn't just some guy making his second fight in the UFC who's 7-2, 8-2. This guy has double the amount of fights, more than that, than Farid Basharat. Like, this guy has a ton of experience. He's dangerous. He's 8-1 to the decision, 9-1 to the submission, 8-2 to the knockout. Like, this guy is extremely well-rounded and can prove he can win by any method out there. Farid hasn't really proved that yet. He proved that he can sub you. He can beat you by points, not really knocking you out, not knocking anybody out. So I'm interested to see how this one plays out. I guarantee you it's closer than what these lines show.
There's no doubt in my mind that's true. Moving on, we got Kennedy and Nzechukwu taking on Chris Barnett. Take a good look, everybody. Take a good look at that sex appeal of Chris Barnett. Full on hairy chest, pudgy as hell, and Kennedy and Nzechukwu is staring you in the soul with that fro and that chin strap. My God, this is a disgusting fight. We got Kennedy and Nzechukwu a minus 620 after losing to OSP as like a minus 800. Here he is taking on Beast Boy. I'm just happy Beast Boy is back in action. Save your money, boys.
Yeah.
Don't bet on this fight for one. Don't bet on it for, I mean, if anything, just throw a couple bucks on Chris Barnett and hope he wins. But no chance I'm trusting Kennedy and Nzechukwu. In all reality, he should absolutely win this fight. He's taller, longer, has the better technical striking, but he's untrustworthy as shit. He will wilt if you get in his face and pressure him. But Chris Barnett at 5'9" and 500 pounds, it's going to be a tough for him to get inside and unleash those bombs in my opinion. But at the same time, Kennedy's not a guy that you can trust and not a guy that I think is going to be in the UFC for long. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually interested to see the weigh-ins in this fight because, Kennedy moving up to heavyweight, I want to see if he like put on some muscle or if he's just, been eating a bunch because he was this big of a favorite in his last fight at 205 against OSP and got pieced up a lot in that fight against a 40-year-old, a guy who just got finished by Ryan Spann super fast. Kennedy's kind of been, after taking that big right hand to Dustin Jacoby, he's pretty untrustworthy. And now they're saying he should cover a minus 620 price tag against a guy in Chris Barnett who's 5'9", which isn't good in my opinion here. Is a powerful heavyweight that does have power though. I think it only takes one shot from Chris Barnett and he could change this whole fight. Now, is he going to be able to hit him very often due to the reach disadvantage and the height disadvantage? I don't really see him having a lot of success very often, but I could see him landing something here. Like Kennedy's kind of slower at heavyweight. I think he's going to be even slower now. And like I said, man, if he's been putting on weight the wrong way here, preparing for heavyweight, Barnett's a guy he's not going to give up on himself. We've seen him hurt really badly. We've seen him, his eye completely messed up and then come back and win fights. This is a guy who's going to try to win the fight against the guy in Kennedy who drops the ball as this big of a favorite. So, yeah, this is disgusting. I wouldn't put your money anywhere near it. I don't even want to make a pick, man. I'm going to say this fight goes over. There's my pick. This fight goes over, whatever it is, 1.5 or 2.5. Sloppily too.
I'm on Kennedy's Instagram right now, his bio says gym owner, fitness trainer. Doesn't even say UFC fighter. And dude, I don't see any like training footage. Yeah, boys. If you're betting Kennedy at minus 620, save your money. Save your money. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Give me Chris Barnett for the pick. Let's move on. Abus Magomedov taking on Bruno Ferreira. Ferreira coming in as the underdog. Magomedov minus 150. Bruno still undefeated, or not undefeated in the UFC. Actually, lost to Ruzaboyev. I kind of forgot about that one, but yeah, that made everybody think Ruzaboyev was actually good. That knockout. But yeah, got chinned by Ruzaboyev, but since then he's picked up a couple wins. Phil Hawes and Dustin Stoltzfus. Nasty spinning back elbows last time out. Taking on Magomedov, who wrestled his way to a decision victory over Warley Alves. Can't blame him. He was on a 2-fight losing streak to Kyle Bahalio and Sean Strickland. So he kind of needed to pick up a win. It's an interesting fight to me. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because if this thing goes past the round, this could get really sloppy. And it's going to be hard figuring out who's winning these rounds if it goes past one. I mean, Bruno Ferreira has a ton of power in the hands, obviously. I just don't – it's hard to figure out what he's going to look like deep into a fight. I mean, all of his fights in the UFC so far, he goes out there against Gregory Rodriguez, gets the knockout early. Even the Contender Series gets the first-round knockout. But he's got the type of power to flatline Gregory Rodriguez, a guy who's taken big shots, whose face has been busted open to where you can see the bone. Extremely tough. Loses to Ruzaboyev in the first round. Phil Hawes had no business being in there with a power puncher like that. Dustin Stoltzfus, was doing good in the fight, having success, and takes the spinning elbows from hell from way out of left field and just gets obliterated. Abus Magomedov is a guy who does get hit. As the fight goes on, he gets hit. But in this spot, man, I just don't see either of these guys having a good gas tank at all. And if you make me pick a fighter, and I gotta think it goes past round one, I'm gonna take the guy who we've seen kind of take guys down and control them in Abus. Abus has the ability to wrestle. I think that's one way he can get Bruno tired. You alluded to it before the show that you think you can kind of take the energy out of Bruno Ferreira just by wrestling him in the first round early and staying safe. I kind of think that way too. I don't think Abus has great cardio. He's shown multiple times he kind of will give up if he's fighting a guy with good cardio and good striking. I think Bruno's got power. I don't think his striking is great, and I don't think his gas tank's going to be that great past one either. So I'm going to take Abus Magomedov to win the fight. I think he's long. He's tall enough too where he could do damage on the feet. He just can't gas himself out trying to gas out Bruno Ferreira. So, like I said, I think this thing gets sloppy if it goes past one, but I got to go with the guy with more wrestling upside.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, boys, if Magomedov wrestles Bruno Ferreira, he's going to win 30-27, and it's going to be dominant as shit. Because after the first round, Bruno Ferreira, I don't think he's going to have anything for him. I think Magomedov, yeah, he gassed out against Strickland. Strickland will do that to you. But that's Strickland, who was the champion the fight after. Kyle Bahalio, losing to Kyle Bahalio, never lost in the UFC. I think there's a big level of competition difference here. I know Abus was crushing cans on the regional scene before this. That's cool. And I hate that he got knocked out by Lewis Taylor. He was about to win $1 million. He was supposed to win $1 million. He got knocked out by Lewis Taylor. It's not a good look. I do think there are some chin concerns on the Abus side. But the same could be said about Bruno Ferreira. Okay, dude got one punch KO'd by Ruzaboyev, who I don't think really is the greatest striker. I don't think Bruno has a gas tank. I do know he has power. But after the first round, does he have power? And we saw Dustin Stoltzfus take this dude down pretty easily and start to wear him out. He was breathing heavy after about 3.5, 4 minutes into that fight. If he didn't get that knockout, I think Dustin Stoltzfus might have took over and won that fight as a big dog.
Yep.
I think if Abus comes in here with a wrestling game plan, I think he can get takedowns on Ferreira, zap his gas tank after round one, and just ride this out to a decision victory and make it look easy. So I think there's more upside on the Magomedov side. He's minus 150 right now. I think he's the rightful favorite. I would probably price him around like minus 200, honestly. But there is, the knockout concern for Ferreira. But if it does get out of round one, I think Abus is going to look like minus 500, minus 600. So Abus is my pick. There are just a few concerns to go along with it, but I do think he wins. Give me the OV in Abu Dhabi. Why would I not take an OV in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I do like about Abus, and we saw it in the Warley Alves fight, it was like the first sequence. Warley Alves threw a right hand and kind of clipped him or hit him and just rushed in at him. And Abus just ducked under, got his underhooks, and put him against the cage. And from there, I was actually super impressed with how easy he got it to the ground, just with like a little trip. And he was on top, got it into a guillotine for a second and kind of controlled him from there. Warley Alves isn't a great fighter. He's, kind of older and a lot of wear and tear, but he's a tough out. And, if he's able to do that to a guy like that, I think he could really do it to a guy like Bruno Ferreira and just drown him.
Yeah.
He might gas in the process, but I don't think he's going to be as gassed as Bruno here.
Last thing, too, is like Abus is a kickboxer at his base. So it's not like he's some bad striker. It's just that he has the grappling to fall back on if he needs it. And I think that'd probably be the easiest path to victory in this one. So we'll see if he does it. But let's move on. Miktabek Orolbai taking on Mateusz Rebecki. Rebecki sit at plus 240, Orolbai minus 330. She give me Oral. And then I say bye. That's my boy right there. Miktabek, 27 or 26 years of age, but really he's about 26,000. Climbing out of wherever. Dude just showed up and he's just the force to be reckoned with in the UFC. The dude is an animal at 155. He can get takedowns at will. Showed a decent enough gas tank to beat Elvis Brenner. Showed some big power in that fight as well. And then, of course, his UFC debut, round 2 submission on Uros Medic. Rebecki, fraud checked against Diego Ferreira. I will say fraud checked because the dude had just the stupidest game plan. And I think that game plan comes down to the level of competition that he was used to facing was not a Diego Ferreira level because he was just going out there looking to take heads off and couldn't take him out and then gassed out and got pieced up. So this is a bounce back fight for him. He's got to bounce back against a really tough opponent. Do you think he could do it?
These odds are a little bit wide, in my opinion, just because how dangerous Rebecki is, and he's got the wrestling to go along with it to maybe combat some of Orolbai's wrestling. But when I watch tape, I think Orolbai's got the slicker takedowns, and he's kind of like glue. He's gonna stick to you. And when I watched Rebecki lose the fight to Diego Ferreira, I was there live in the crowd, and I watched it back too. And on tape, he was tired at like 4 minutes, 30 seconds into the second round. So if you have a tough first round here against Orolbai and you get put on your back just one time and then you're working to try to get back to your feet and this dude's all over you looking to take you back down, landing elbows, I think he's going to get tired again. And we saw Orolbai in a dog fight with Elvis Brenner, had him in a ton of trouble and, kind of got tired there as well. But that was such a high-paced fight. And he had Elvis Brenner on the verge of going out. And then he would just duck under and get an easy takedown. I think his cardio is better than Rebecki. I think he's willing to fight harder for 15 minutes. We saw Rebecki, in that third round against Diego, just get completely lit up, put on his back, and just pound it out. Pause. But I think Orolbai, his style is going to pay dividends here if he can get the wrestling going early. Rebecki too, he's very powerful, he's very compact, and he's filled with a ton of muscle. And it just seems like as fight goes on, there's not much sting left on his punches. It looks like his arms weigh 3 times as much as they normally do because he's tired. And if you take that power away from him and the speed on his entries to his takedowns, I think Orolbai is just kind of going to do what he wants in this second and third round here. So if Orolbai comes out with a good first round, I think he is going to for sure win this fight.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Rebecki can conserve his gas tank a little bit better. And if he does, how does he look, into rounds 2 and 3? Because we've seen him gas out before. He gassed out in his debut, looking to take out Nick Fiore, and couldn't finish him, but he was still good enough to win that fight. I just don't know if, even if he does have a better gas tank, can he still stop the takedowns. I know he's a really solid wrestler. Like it's not really about a skills thing. It's just that he's also 5'7". He's got T-Rex arms. He has power, but it's just really hard for him to reach guys unless he's in the pocket. I think Orolbai is just a little bit too big for him, a little bit too strong. And I think the takedown on his techniques are pretty solid. I mean, the guy's a really good wrestler. So I want to side with Orolbai. I kind of agree with you. The line is a little bit wide just because Rebecki's not a bad fighter. He's not a bad fighter, and I think he does still have some potential to him. Just a loss to Diego Ferreira is not really something that you can't come back from. It's just a really tough matchup for him to come back from right away. I wouldn't be shocked, if Rebecki is able to even end up in top position. Maybe we haven't really seen Orolbai on his back too much. I know he got taken out a couple times by Brenner. Brenner's not really the best wrestler as far as keeping top position. And there's a path for Rebecki to do that. Get on top, be heavy, land some ground and pound, and keep position. But I'm gonna side with the younger guy here in Orolbai.
Yeah, you know what I noticed too, though, in the fight against Diego is when, especially in the second and third round, second is where I really saw it. Whenever he would get taken down by Rebecki, he got up so easily. Like he was on his back and had him in his guard and just got the feet to the hip, pushed off a little bit, and was up to his feet. Like it was super easy. I think a guy like Orolbai, who has that really good ground game and knowledge of how to land takedowns and get back to your feet, I think he'll do the same thing as the fight goes on too. So he'll be my pick.
All right, moving on to the featured prelim. We got Jeff Neal taking on RDA. RDA sit at plus 255. The 39-year-old taking on the 34-year-old who sits at minus 350. RDA coming off the loss to Mateusz Gamrot. We were there. He nearly ended for Gamrot with that knee, which I would have loved, considering we were sitting next to that Polish guy who was just so annoying. Oh, God, that guy, I wanted to go down there and slap him. But he didn't. Gamrot beat him. We know RDA's older. We know he's a little bit undersized for 170. And Jeff Neal, we know his deal. Good boxer, solid takedown defense. I think he's probably going to be the better striker here. I think RDA probably needs to grapple. But with that said, it's not like RDA is a fish out of water on the feet. I mean, he's a solid striker himself. Solid everywhere. So considering the odds, I'm a little bit tempted to maybe look at RDA just because he is the vet. And I don't really think Jeff Neal is like some world beater. He's very good, but he's not a world beater. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I look at RDA in his last, 4 fights. He loses to Rafael Fiziev at 155. Fiziev's a phenomenal striker, and he loses in the 5th round by knockout. That fight kind of showed me, RDA's had a long career. He's been in some good fights. He's taken some damage, and he's not really taking these shots like he once used to. And Jeff Neal might not have the technical striking that Fiziev does, but he hits just as hard, if not harder. And he's a weight class up here. If he starts landing shots like that, I think Rafael could be in some big trouble. And then his only win in his last 4 fights was Brian Barberina, who's no longer fighting, who is, a gust of wind takes him down and submits him. And that's what RDA did. And it took him damn near 2 rounds. So, and then he loses to Luque, where he got out wrestled by Luque. We all seen what Luque has been doing lately. And then the Mateusz Gamrot, no sweat off his back for that one, because Gamrot's such an annoying, pesky wrestling style that he's just better than everybody in that department. So if RDA comes out here and can't get takedowns and Jeff Neal lets his hands go a little bit, I think he's going to be in big trouble. I mean, Jeff Neal's coming off of a fight with Ian Gary. Before that, Shavkat Rakhmonov. And now he's getting an undersized 155er in Rafael dos Anjos, who is pushing 40 years old and taking a ton of damage. So that right there is making me a little hesitant to take RDA as a dog. If he does win, I think he's just got to keep Jeff Neal against the cage and make it extremely boring. Because if this fight becomes fun, I think RDA is getting knocked out.
Yeah, I think so too. But we got the new gloves, so I don't know if it's going to be a knockout. I could probably see a Jeff Neal decision victory here, because RDA at 170, I don't like it. I think he's just too small. I don't think he handles the pop of the guy's shots as well.
Yeah.
And I love Jeff Neal's boxing. Am I crazy to say that this could turn into like a Luque part 2 where Jeff Neal's just beating the piss out of him?
It wouldn't surprise me.
If he can't get takedowns. I mean, I know Luque is a lot harder to hit, or a lot easier to hit, I should say. And he kind of just stands there. But yeah, I mean, if you let Jeff Neal get in the flow, it's not going to look good. So Jeff Neal's my pick. But RDA, if he can mix in some stuff, he's live. And Jeff Neal doesn't really have the best statistics, honestly. But I don't see like RDA out voluming him. I don't really see him being able to stand in the pocket and outbox him. He's gonna have to have a good game plan. And minus 255, it's not terrible to take a shot on him, but I do think he probably loses. So I'll take Jeff Neal. All right, moving on. We got Putin Magomedov taking on Armen Petrosyan. Petrosyan comes in as the underdog. Magomedov still undefeated. Coming off the win to Michal Oleksiejczuk not too long ago. Any card in the Middle East, they got to get this guy on there because it's the only place he can fight. He's the favorite here. Honestly, I haven't loved what I've seen from Putin just because he had a lot of hype coming into the UFC, and maybe I'm giving him too much slack because he's looked good. He's won every fight. And I was sort of impressed with his last fight against Oleksiejczuk just because Oleksiejczuk, we know, has a lot of really heavy pressure. He's throwing a lot of bombs at you. And for Magomedov to fight off his back foot and be that effective for 15 minutes showed me a lot, just as far as like how he extends into a fight. But Petrosyan's a lot different of a fighter. Very good kickboxer, a lot of volume, a lot of pressure. And really, he's only losing fights where he's getting taken down. You know, he's losing to Caio Borralho and Adolfo Vieira. He's not a grappler. He says this is a striker's delight at its finest. I love the matchup. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I think Putin, obviously with the hype coming into the UFC, and he'd had like 10 or 11 knockouts when he made his debut. I think everybody just expected a knockout machine, and he goes out there against Bruno Silva and looked really good early. Had him hurt, was landing some crafty kicks and everything, but he gets taken down 3 times, and the fight's somewhat close. Damage over control by far in that fight where Shara won. But there's some moments I'm like, man, if he gets just stuck on his back at the beginning of the round, this thing is chalked up to a Bruno Silva round. And then he fights Tricoli, and Tricoli had some decent moments early, man. He was backing up Shara, landing some big right hands, made it very interesting. But at the end of the day, Tricoli is a jiu-jitsu guy who's, would rather probably pull guard and get you to the ground and fight off his back than in a 15-minute kickboxing match. So that's an easy win for Shara. And then he fights Oleksiejczuk, who has better striking than his 2 previous fighters. But Oleksiejczuk's a guy who just kind of throws that big left hand and just falls in almost face first into damage. Like if Oleksiejczuk misses with the left hand, he's sitting right there to be hit. And Shara was able to outland him on the significant strikes. But, Oleksiejczuk took him down 3 times. Like when you're getting taken down 3 times by Michal Oleksiejczuk, you got some stuff to work on with the ground game. Because at some point you're going to get exposed by these really good wrestlers. Armen Petrosyan, not that though. He's not a wrestler, but what he does have that's different than everybody that has fought Shara is, the ability to fight at range and to fight Shara at range. If this becomes just nothing but kicks, it's a pretty even matchup. Armen Petrosyan is a big guy as well. And his fighting at range is extremely good. He's not like the most powerful guy in the world, but he's very accurate. He's fast. I actually think he has better hands than Shara. I think Shara's kicks are very effective and very good, but I think Petrosyan's got the better hands in this matchup. And we'll see how Shara deals with the guy who's kind of got the similar skill set to him. A guy in Petrosyan who, I know he's not a wrestler, but I was telling you before this, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes out here and lands a takedown or 2 in this matchup. We saw him do it against Christian Leroy Duncan. Landed a takedown in that matchup. Leroy Duncan's a guy who has good takedown defense. So, yeah, this is an interesting one. This is very close. I don't really like the minus 185 on Shara here. Petrosyan has fought good fighters. He's very technical as well. So I think this is a coin fight, 50-50 matchup. You are in Abu Dhabi, so if this thing goes to the judges' scorecards, at least one of them is going to have it for Shara regardless. So you're kind of fighting the judges at that point. Yeah. This is a tough one to predict, man. I'm actually going to go Armin Petrosyan to win to the viewers. I think everybody at home is going to think, man, Armin won that fight, and then we might get some kind of robbery on the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, I think Petrosyan, better UFC competition. He's fought a lot better guys. I like his pace, his mix of weapons a little bit more. Shara is just like all kicks, man. He uses his kicks like punches, which is cool because it keeps him out of range. And maybe that'll frustrate Armin, just not be able to get into the range that he likes. He's kind of got T-Rex arms, honestly, at 6'3". I don't think he's 6'3", honestly. I think he's probably more like 6'1", 6'2". But
Who's that, Shara?
Petrosyan.
Oh, Petrosyan, yeah.
I don't think
I'd probably agree.
Yeah, if this was anywhere else, I'd be a little bit more on the side of Petrosyan, but I think it probably goes to decision, and they'll probably give it to Magomedov. So I'll take Magomedov for the pick, but I don't like it at all. I'm not a huge believer in Magomedov. Speaking about Magomeds, here we go. Magomed Ankalaev taking on Alexander Rakic, sitting at +3 hundo. Ankalaev comes back at -430. It's a solid matchup, boys. This is where it all comes down to for Ankalaev. He's got to win this fight, otherwise he's a fraud. Okay, everyone's saying that he should get a title shot, buddy. He had his title shot against Jan Blachowicz. He got his legs kicked off and was almost TKO'd from leg kicks, and then had to wrestle it out. It goes to a draw. Then his only win is Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker. Who's not knocking out Johnny Walker nowadays? I mean, Rakic, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He looked great against Yuri in round 1, and then the pressure got to him. He wilted. He got TKO'd. Maybe it's a nice little buy low spot on Rakic. Could be. I think the fight is pretty close. I think the odds on Ankalaev are pretty wide, but we are in Abu Dhabi. There is definitely a man that they want to win, and I think it could come down to a decision. What do you think?
Yeah, I largely feel the same way. I think Ankalaev in this spot has got to be very, very cautious of the leg kicks, and this is probably the most important thing for Rakic if he wants a chance to win this fight. We've seen Rakic go out there like against Yuri and kick the legs off of him, which, we've seen Ferreira do. Yuri's kind of very heavy on that front foot and leaves it open. But, there's been multiple fights where Magomed Ankalaev kind of similar, and he's had to switch stances because he's getting his leg chewed up. We saw it against Jan Blachowicz, like you alluded to. But even watching the Johnny Walker fight, the second one at the Apex, like he was getting his leg kicked off by Johnny in the first round. And Johnny Walker, I mean, look how that fight turned out. First of all, doesn't really say a lot. But if Rakic can go out there, I think he's a better leg kicker than Johnny Walker. I think he kicks harder than him as well. I think that's his path to victory, is just go for that leg the entire first round and just kind of, make him carry his weight in different ways while he's standing. And then you kind of open yourself up to have success the rest of the fight. I think if he does that, Magomed's going to be forced to wrestle. And can he wrestle him or not? Maybe. He's just, Magomed's a guy who has the good wrestling that never goes to it. He's always standing with these guys. He does have power on the feet. Sometimes he'll be a little low volume and just looking for the big shot. But he's winning fights, and he's winning basically every fight they throw in front of him besides going to the draw with Blachowicz. I think he should beat Alexander Rakic. I do think the line is wide here. After watching Rakic beating up Yuri, I've told you multiple times, I think Yuri's pretty overrated. But he was winning that fight, and then he just gets clipped and hit with a big shot. And Magomed Ankalaev is a guy who has big power too. I could see something like that happening. I could see Rakic looking really good in the first round and just getting, hit with something big in the second or third. I do think Magomed's probably going to have maybe slightly better cardio here than Rakic. It seems like if Magomed goes out there and, just presses forward and does some good work in the first, I could see Rakic getting tired and slowed down too. But Magomed's going to be the pick. He's got to watch the leg kicks. Rakic has to get him going if he wants to win. And second and third round, he's got to watch out for the big shot because I think Magomed could put him out.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Ankalaev for the pick, but I don't love the money line. It doesn't really, unless he finds a knockout, I'm not sure that he really covers it. Because I think Rakic is solid on the feet. He's got solid takedown defense. I think he can hold his own, and Ankalaev doesn't really blow you away with like oohs and ahs. Especially, I'll never forget that Thiago Santos fight. I could not believe how boring that shit was. 5 rounds of nothing. And then then he gets on the mic and he's like, I just wanted to prove I can go 5 rounds. It was the most boring five rounds of my life. Not actually, because we got Rose and Carla to thank for that. But yeah, I'm gonna take Ankalaev for the pick, but don't love it. Lerone Murphy taking on Dan Ige. Ige sits at plus 196. Murphy comes back at minus 260. A couple of 33-year-olds going in there. Lerone Murphy still undefeated off a big win over Edson Barbosa, where he beat the piss out of him. I was honestly surprised that one made it to the scorecards. But Edson showed a lot of heart, but Lerone was just too young, too fast, too good. Very good all-around fighter is Lerone Murphy. Dan Ige, we just saw him face Diego Lopez on 4 hours notice. So he's going to have a lot of fans backing him in this one. And he'll probably get a lot of public money, honestly. I mean, he's kind of a legend now after taking that fight on 4 hours notice on a big card. Plus 196. It's very tempting. And I think it's growing as we speak. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, man. I love Dan Ige. I think he's super game to fight anybody. He can kind of fight any style, too. Like, he's got good wrestling in his back pocket. He's obviously got a shitload of power on the feet. His boxing is good. I look at Lerone Murphy, though. He's kind of, oh, man, I don't want to say he's overrated because he's winning fights. He's 14-0. But I think people are just so high on him. And there's been times that I've seen in fights where I just think like, man, this is, if he's fighting better level of competition, he's going to get finished, or, he drops that round if he's fighting a guy with a little bit better wrestling. His wins in the UFC, Douglas Silva de Andrade by decision is a good win. Hamosh, round 1. Hamosh gets finished. Mir Khani, guy gets finished every fight. And then he fights Gabriel Santos and as a big favorite, and Santos goes to split decision in a fight. A lot of people, including myself, thought Santos had a case to win. Like, he made it that close with him. And then Santos moves on and gets knocked out in his next fight. But other than that, it's Josh Kulabau and then an old guy in Edson Barboza who has had a long career with a ton of damage. I just don't know if he goes up there against Dan Ige. I mean, what's his strong suit here in this matchup? Like, does he go out there and outbox Dan Ige for 3 rounds? Possibly. Maybe he'll land some more volume, but he's got, he's going to be at risk of taking a big shot. We've seen him hurt in the past before. Is he going to go out there and wrestle Dan Ige? I really don't think he has the ability to do that successfully. I mean, Dan Ige has a great cardio. He's got one of the best teams in the world and coaches behind him. It's going to have a great game plan for him here. Like we saw against Diego Lopez. Like, Lopez is a savage in round 1 and 2, and he was in that fight against Ige as well. But Dan Ige put it on Diego Lopez in round 3. So I got to think Dan Ige wins round 3 here against Lerone Murphy at a pretty decent clip. And then you're just down to round 1 and 2. Can you make enough noise? Can he land enough big shots to make one of those rounds close? And I think you're looking at a split decision type fight. So I got to go with my boy Dan Ige in this one, man. I think Lerone Murphy's a good fighter. I just don't think he's a dominant guy that's going to go out there and dominate high-level competition and veterans who are still, somewhat young at 33 years old, like Dan Ige here. So, yeah, give me Ige, man, for the upset.
Yeah, I really want to go that way too. It's just Lerone. I think Lerone is pretty good. I mean, he has great statistics, and I know he's not faced the level of competition. And I really respect Dan Ige, just not even what he just did, but like just his career. He's fought a lot of good guys. Diego, obviously, Bryce Mitchell, Mozar Evloev, Josh Emmett, Korean Zombie, Calvin Kattar, Edson Barbosa. So I mean, he's game. He's game, no doubt about it. I just think Lerone is probably going to be able to edge out a really close one. But I do think it's going to be really close, and I think it could go either way. But I do think Lerone probably gets his hand raised because he can mix in some wrestling. Dan Ige doesn't have the best takedown defense, and not that Lerone does either statistically, but he is probably the better wrestler out of both. Dan Ige probably the better boxer, but Lerone showed a lot of good stuff his last fight. I mean, that jab is so long and he uses it so well. His kicks are good. And he showed a really high volume in that fight too. So maybe it's recency bias, but I think Lerone probably gets his hand raised in this one in a close decision.
Here's my last thing I want to say about it is I think it was it was against Barboza when Barboza's on his back and lands a kick upstairs. Like I think an up kick to Lerone Murphy, and it looked like Murphy went out for a second. Like he got hurt that bad. Like he almost collapsed into him. Like went limp for a split second. Shots like that, getting dropped by Zubaira Tukugov in his debut.
Saying he's chinny?
Huh?
You saying he's chinny?
Not that he's chinny. He's just, I think he's there to be hit at times. Like a lot of guys have put up some big numbers on him, like Gabriel Santos, 69 significant strikes, 79 from Barboza. I know that was a 5-round fight, but that's a fight where Lerone Murphy had 4 takedowns and a ton of control time, and he's still getting hit while it's on the feet. I think Dan Ige hits harder than everybody Lerone Murphy has fought. And I'm just going to call it now. There's going to be a point in this fight where Lerone Murphy is in trouble. I think it's towards later in the fight. I think he's going to get stunned on the feet and he's going to be on wobbly legs. I think Murphy's tough. He's well conditioned enough. He's probably going to survive it. But I think there's going to be sketchy moments for him in this fight.
Yeah, I'm not betting any KOs until the new gloves are back. Or the old gloves are back, I should say. There's just no way. But yeah, let's move on from this one. Robert Whittaker taking on Khamzat Chimaev. The rebooking that was supposed to go down this June. Chimaev coming in. Hopefully he actually makes it to the fight. We still don't know because, even though he hasn't pulled out yet, he's still got to weigh in. But I will say this. I watched the UFC countdown today, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that he went back to the mountains, and he's training in the mountains for this fight. I think that's good for him. I think the fame kind of maybe got to his head. He was living in Dubai for a good amount of time. I think he changed his flag to the UAE flag, which is wild to me. I think this is a good step in the right direction for Chimaev. I think he's got to lock in because we all know the potential is there. And I think that potential could come to fruition, and we could see it play out this Saturday against Robert Whittaker. Whittaker comes in at plus 186. We know the deal with Whittaker, been around forever. Coming off the knockout win against Ikram Aliskerov, who took the fight on short notice. Easy work for Whittaker there. Underdog odds on Whittaker. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to ignore anytime Whittaker's a bigger underdog like this. And was Whittaker a slight underdog against Ikram? No, I think Ikram was slight.
I think he was like minus 150 or something.
150-ish. Yeah. I mean, Robert Whittaker is so skilled with the striking. His boxing is really, really clean. I mean, if he keeps the fight at range, I think he has a good chance to win a lot of moments in the fight. I just don't know if he keeps the fight at range against a guy like Khamzat. Khamzat, his wrestling, especially early in the fights, when you're ragdolling Kamaru Usman and landing 4 takedowns on Kamaru Usman, you're doing something right, and you got some skills. And he's such a strong guy for both weight classes, 170 and 185. I just think he's going to get to Robert in the first 2 rounds with the wrestling. Not that Robert has bad takedown defense. It's just there's nothing you can really do about it with Khamzat. I mean, Robert has an 82% takedown defense, which is extremely high for his length of his career. But I mean, against the best wrestlers, I think Usman had the best takedown defense on paper of all time. And look what he did to him. And if he gets your back, you're basically stuck there the rest of the round. So I just think this comes down to, if Khamzat messes around on the feet, he's going to put himself in danger of losing moments and getting outstruck a little bit. But he's also got power in the hands. We've seen Robert Whittaker hurt quite a few times in the UFC. I could see something like that happening. I just don't think Khamzat messes around here. At this level that he's at, he's close to a title shot. I think he goes out there and just tries to ragdoll Robert Whittaker. My only other concern would be that Khamzat does that successfully and maybe just goes too hard, too early and gets tired, and Robert works himself back into the fight like guys have in the past against Khamzat. But for the pick, man, I think Khamzat just does what he does, wins the decision, or even finds the finish at some point in the fight.
Yeah. Let me make this clear. I hate this fight from a betting perspective. I hate this fight from a pick perspective because we have absolutely no gauge at all how Khamzat Chimaev looks against the top 15 in the middleweight division. Never faced the top 15 guy in the middleweight division. Now he's getting the number 3 ranked guy. So there's just so many unknowns, in my opinion. The eye test tells me that Chimaev is the more physical guy. He's going to be more dangerous early on. We don't really think his cardio is going to be the best later in the fight. And to me, honestly, I think it's probably a good live betting spot. I can understand why he's the favorite because odds are he probably gets a early finish, and you don't really want to be laying or throwing out like plus money on Chimaev to get like if he's going to win in round 1 type of thing. You know, you're going to adjust the live odds type of thing. But I just don't really, not a big believer in Whittaker. Never really been one. And there's certain matchups that I like for him. You know, I think the Costa fight, I liked him a lot because Costa isn't what he once was, where he was super aggressive. He would pressure you. He'd throw caution to the wind. Now he's kind of just kickboxing with guys. And Whittaker's going to win a lot of kickboxing battles. But this isn't going to be a kickboxing battle. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be. And I think Whittaker probably gets bullied early. And then from there, if he can survive it, he can take over. So it's kind of like last week where we have Ferreira versus Hernandez. And we know Pereira is going to be dangerous early, but how long is he going to be dangerous? Is he going to finish Hernandez early? But we know if he doesn't finish him early, Hernandez is going to take over. It's kind of the same thing here. So for me, I don't like those fights from a betting perspective or a picks perspective because you're basically trying to predict if the guy gets finished early in the fight or not. And I'm just not really in that game. So I'm going to take Chimaev for the pick. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not going to bet either side on this one. If anything, I might look at like an over under, but Chimaev's the pick.
Yeah, you know what's crazy for Chimaev? You know, he's been in the UFC for I think going on what 4.5 years or so. He's only got 7 fights in the UFC. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
2020 was his debut.
he's so inactive. It's
So
ridiculous.
inactive, and it's kind of for the first what was it 3 fights at least. He's not fighting the highest level competition. Yeah, he fought GM3, but it's such a mismatch with the power and strength. Li Jingliang destroyed in the first round. Gilbert Burns gave him a super tough fight. Kevin Holland, no match. And then Usman worked himself back in the fight. But I think we're still due to see Khamzat just show up one time and just have 3 rounds of cardio all of a sudden. Like if he's been working at it, he's back in the mountains and stuff. He's due for that type of fight where he just goes out there, works the wrestling, but just doesn't empty the tank completely trying to finish these guys early. Like if he can just put together a 15 minutes,
Well, 25. He's got to do it for 25.
or yeah, is this 5 rounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But I just think his cardio is going to start looking better at some point. It's got to, or else he just isn't taking shit serious and he's got such an ego that he thinks he's going to beat everybody in round 1. Because if this guy had 15 to 20 minutes of cardio, he'd be insane, absolutely insane.
I would be more inclined to think that he could improve his cardio, but the fact that he gets sick every year,
Makes you think it's something with the lungs.
Yeah, it tells me that's like something biologically, type of thing. But yeah, let's move on to the main event. We got Ilia Topuria taking on Max Holloway. I said it at the top of the show. My favorite fight of the year, the highest level fight of the year, maybe the highest level fight in quite some time. I think both guys are amazing. Max Holloway coming off the big knockout at UFC 300. I was there in attendance. I had Holloway round 5 KO at plus 7,500 odds. I love the guy for it. Everybody loves him. But he's taking on an absolute killer. Ilia Topuria coming off the knockout victory over Volkanovski. I had to rewatch it today. It was tough to watch, but I just had to appreciate the beauty of it, man. Just watching Topuria box, it's a thing of perfection. I watched all of his fights today, and I was glued to the TV. I was just like, this dude's insane. I'm a big believer in Ilia Topuria. I think he beats Max Holloway. Without the new gloves, I would say he knocks him out. But with the new gloves, gets a little bit dicey. But I do think he wins. I want to hear your thoughts, though, before I go into more detail.
Ilia Topuria is a guy that everyone, I'm gonna start. Let me start by saying this. I made a video saying that I thought Ilia was going to beat Max because his boxing is good. If you look at the record of Max Holloway, he's got 7 losses in the UFC, and 6 of those losses come to guys who have just as good a boxing, if not a little bit better than him. Lost to Volk 3 times. Yeah, the fights were close. Lost to Dustin Poirier twice, and he lost to young Conor McGregor when they were both just getting into the UFC. Ilia Topuria is going to have clean boxing at the level, or if not a little bit better than Max Holloway. He's going to have the power on his side, and he's going to have the wrestling in his back pocket to mix in if he needs to. I mean, Max is coming off of the win over Justin Gaethje and a phenomenal performance. I think you and I are both on Max, or at least I know he was my underdog of the week. I was super high on him. I thought the cardio was going to be way better in the boxing. But, he broke Justin's nose, shattered his nose in the first round. And that played a huge factor going forward. And not saying he got lucky or anything. Like, that was a skilled shot and, good on Max. That's what helped him throughout the fight. But even after that, Justin started working himself back into the fight around round 4 and was landing big shots and, had Max stumbled him at one time. I just think here, I don't think he's going to be able to hit Ilia Topuria like that. I don't think he's going to hurt Ilia Topuria very often if he does at all. But Ilia, I think, is going to stay in his face. He's going to use his own boxing to land the more damaging shots. And I think everybody's writing off Ilia. Everybody in my video that I predicted that Ilia would win is saying that I'm writing Max off. How dare you disrespect the legend? I think they're disrespecting Ilia Topuria by thinking he has no chance to beat Max Holloway here. Everybody who comes up the ranks, look at Conor McGregor, Alex Pereira, all these big champions, everybody was riding off fight after fight after fight until they just became one of the greats of all time. I mean, Ilia Topuria has the skill set to do that. I think he's extremely focused. He's one of those guys that just seems like he wants to cement a legacy for himself. And I think he is the real deal. And I think this could be a very close fight. But I just think he's a way better boxer. Not a way better boxer. I think he's a more technical boxer that has a lot of power in his hands. That's going to be the difference in this fight. And mix that in with the wrestling to fall back on. Maybe he doesn't knock him out. I think he could. But I think he has enough to win 3 rounds against Max here.
You know what this kind of feels like? I just thought of this as you're speaking. To me, it kind of feels like Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira.
Yeah.
Where we got a fan favorite who's like a plus 180, plus 185 underdog against just an absolute killer who I don't think can be beat.
Yep.
Like everybody can be beat. I don't see anyone beating Topuria at 145, man. I think he's just too good. Like, watching him today, it kind of reminded me of like a Tank Davis. Just his ability to like walk you down without throwing anything, just in your face, pressuring you without like even throwing a lot of punches. It's just, the danger that's coming at you. Like, he's very low in his stance, keeps his hands high, and he's just ready to explode. And I think his timing, his setups are next level stuff. There's no way you could compare him to Justin Gaethje. Gaethje is just a punching bag that throws back. And he throws back hard. And he hit Max a couple of times in that 4th round where I see those and I'm like, yeah, there's openings for Topuria in this fight. And I know Max is good. This isn't a knock on Max because I'm a big believer in Max as well, but I don't think he beats Topuria, man. I don't think anybody beats him at 145. He has the wrestling to fall back on too. That's like another thing that people don't really even take into account. The guy's base is Greco-Roman wrestling, and if he ever gets hurt in a fight, he's going to take you down. Or if he's winning and he's starting to get tired, maybe he knocks you down and he lets a little bit of energy out and he starts to get a little bit tired, he just take you down. I think that he's the best all-around fighter at 145. I think he retains his belt here against Max Holloway. Whether it's KO, submission, or decision, I think he could get any of them, honestly. So, Topuria, it is for me and still, but at minus 245. Am I going to go heavy on it? Probably not. Considering it's a chalk. I'm not a big chalk guy. But I do think he wins.
I think the confidence too is massive for Topuria. He's got so much confidence and he fights with them. I mean, we saw it against Volk. I think that's one thing that guys like Justin Gaethje and the Korean Zombie are kind of lacking against Max Holloway. Like after that first round, Justin had no confidence left in that fight. Arnold Allen, his win before those two fights, we were at that fight live. It wasn't a blowout by any means. Like, he didn't blow Arnold Allen out. I mean, he won the fight handily, 49-46. I think some judge had it like 48-47. But other than that, he loses to Volk. Even when Volk was in there against Ilia Topuria, Volk had no confidence because Ilia was just walking him down, eating his shots, waiting, taking his time, and then just landing big shots. And then finally, that last sequence was one of the nastiest boxing sequences you're going to see in this division ever. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think Ilia is here to stay. I think this is the guy we look up in 2 to 3 years and people are still chasing him, and he's just dropping people like flies. Like, if he gets past Max, I don't really see anybody in the rankings that's going to come up here and not get flatlined by this dude.
Yeah, I agree. A couple more things, because I know that the comments are just going to flow in of like the things that you could argue for Holloway. Dude's never been knocked out. Cool, that's great. But he's taken an unbelievable amount of significant strikes throughout his career. He has a ton of scar tissue. He's going to wear the damage worse than Ilia Topuria will. And what was I going to say? Also, if you've seen in the news, Dana White wants to go to Spain. They want to go to Spain and Africa. You want Topuria as your champion if you're going to go to Spain. If you're not going to go to Spain for like a fight night, maybe you could. But you probably want a belt on the line if you're going to make big moves into another country that you haven't really been to. So I think there's a lot on the line for Topuria here. I think he passes it. He's passed everything in his career with flying colors. I think he does that again here with Holloway. All right, that'll do it. Appreciate y'all for watching. Please like and subscribe for us. Once again, if you want our bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks Premium membership. Link down in the description below. Follow us on Home of Picks on IG to stay up to date with everything. At HeyJobPicks on the medias for me. Where can they find you?
All social media is at the Parlay MMA.
All right, boys. Till next time, the double leg signing out.